Bagel, Nayang, Gay, Jimalang. Good day, friends. My name is John Graham. I'm the Senior Learning Assistance Officer based at the Nathan campus here at Griffith University. I'm also a proud GUMURRII man, saltwater man from the Gold Coast region. In accordance with Aboriginal protocol, I've been given the honour of acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today. I formally acknowledge the elders, families and forebearers of the Yagara and Yagara peoples, and acknowledge they are the traditional custodians of this land and have been so for millennia. I also pay my respects to elders, past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. As part of the elders' surviving and continuous culture in the world, I pay my respects to the spirit of this land and her people. A better understanding and respect for Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander cultures develops an enriched appreciation of Australia's cultural heritage and can lead to reconciliation. This is essential to the maturity of Australia as a nation and it's fundamental to the development of the Australian identity. I would also like to acknowledge my GUMURRII colleague, Senior Learning Assistance Officer Jennifer Campbell, and also Andrew Quirk, the Communications Officer from the Griffith Graduate Research School, for the work and effort that they have contributed in planning, organising and conducting this innovative program. Also like to acknowledge the support provided by both Professor Adrian Miller, Professor of Indigenous Research for the Indigenous Research Unit, and Professor Sue Burness-Price, who is the Dean of the Griffith Graduate Research School. Also welcome everyone involved in this initial Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Pathway session. The 2014 Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Research Study Information Session is presented in partnership between the GUMURRII Unit, Indigenous Research Unit, and the Griffith Graduate Research School. The session is the initial Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Research Pathway Information Session that has been planned to incorporate our vision of Grow Our Own and to encourage our potential postgrad students to attend and participate in this session from an Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander perspective. At this session, we'll present an overview of Griffith research, the PhD journey, and help address common misconceptions about research study. You'll pick up tips on finding a suitable research supervisor, issues of cultural safety, who to go for support, and what to expect in the first year of your research journey. Our panel comprising of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander academic group researchers will share their study research experience. These great people in front of me, who will be introduced by Jennifer shortly. On behalf of the traditional custodians and members of this local community, I've had the pleasure in welcoming you all to this event. I wish everyone the best in their future endeavours and thank everyone in advance for their respect, participation and involvement in this exciting program. Thank you. Just before I move on, I'll just like to raise some housekeeping matters before we continue the session. Toilets are located outside of the door here to the right, and if there is a fire and we need to evacuate, the exit door is at the back here on the right, and you go down the stairs and we'll meet here on the grassed area at the back and wait for further instruction from the fire warden. I'd also like to bring your attention to the fact that the session is being filmed. The purpose is this to provide information to other people who may not be interested in future postgrad studies but couldn't make it today for various reasons. I know Jennifer and I both received a fair few people who are interested in the session and also pathways and expressed their interest in having a look at what's been filmed today. If you aren't comfortable with being filmed, please let us know and we'll try and make alternate arrangements. I would now like to introduce you to Dr. Eliza Howard, the Griffith Graduate Education Officer from Griffith Graduate Research School, who will commence this discussion. Professor Adrian Miller will then continue the discussions, so please welcome Eliza to the stage.
So today, I guess this is what we're talking about. We're going to have, Adrian's going to come up and help me a little bit where he can give some advice in this first bit as well. My name's Eliza. I'm the Graduate Education Officer. As a lot of things are at universities, they tend to be, the titles that we have don't tend to really reflect what we do, but my main job is to see PhD and Masters, Research Masters candidates finish successfully, happily, as quickly as possible. And I love my job because I get to work with people from all over the world doing heaps of different really interesting topics. And, you know, we're doing all sorts of methodologies and are in all sorts of fields. And that's one of the great joys that I have in my work here. And I also get to work with great people like Adrian and John and Jennifer and as well. So I get some good mentoring myself from around the campus. But I guess this is what we're going to talk to you about today, about being prepared, what to expect, getting started, making sure that you sort of, you know what you're in for, but you're also really confident about the journey that you're interested in embarking on. You know, one of my jobs is to give high degree researchers confidence to do well in their work. And it's a very common thing as a high degree researcher to not be confident, to think, am I good enough? Well, you are good enough. You know, I know John and Jen have asked you to be here today, and Adrian, because they think that you're going to make a massive contribution to not only your community but also society in general. And it's really important for us that you come and you know, do research because you will make huge impact on your communities and society. Indigenous research is at the cutting edge in many ways of the research that's happening here at Griffith, right from exploring Indigenous methodologies to, you know, working with communities to make things better in the communities as well. So, you know, we really do, we value the work that our high degree researchers do. The high degree researchers at the university make up a very significant and influential base of the research here, and we really do appreciate the work that high degree researchers do. And so, you know, we'd love you to come and be part of that base here. But as I said, a lot of people sort of think, am I good enough to do this? Well, as I said before, you are. This is about tenacity, this is about contributing to society, this is about helping other people understand your research. And I'm not just talking about Indigenous research here, but I'm talking about all researchers, what all researchers do. It's their duty to help people understand what they're researching, why it's important. And certainly there's a lot of work to be done in the Indigenous research area too. So we would love for more of it to be happening here. We're trying to build a really dynamic research culture where we're getting a lot of good interdisciplinary work going on here. We've got some great support structures to help you as well, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute too. Oops, did I skip one then? Oh. So what to do before applying is, oh, we have a clicker, do we? No? What to do before, excellent. We're double clicking here. It's kind of like two people with a garage door opener. What to do before applying? Firstly, I guess come to sessions like this. Come and meet people, meet potential supervisors. Obviously, you're all very passionate people. You wouldn't sort of have showed up here today if you weren't passionate about a particular area of research, but know what research you're interested in. You don't need to know your topic. You don't need to know, you know, anything about the specifics, but you have to have a passion. And from there, what your professors can help you do, like people like me can help you do, is to really drill down and find a topic that you can make a really significant contribution on. So it's not like we say, hey, come to Griffith, we'll let you in. You know, obviously you can do really high quality research, off you go. There are so many support structures to help you, right from the people at GUMURRII and the Indigenous Research Unit, to people like me in the Griffith Graduate Research School, people within the library who can help you with academic writing skills, all of these sorts of things. So be aware of all of the things that are available to you at Griffith. Investigate potential supervisors. If you need to be introduced to people, I can help introduce you. People like Adrian can help introduce you. Even these fine people down here who are already doing PhDs or have just finished in Kerry's Kerry's case, she's very relieved about that. They can also help introduce you to, because this is about building a research culture and a research community, and having, you know, that way we can have the best researchers doing the best research, and it's very exciting. So finding a supervisor is, again, you find out what your passion is. We can introduce you to people who are interested. Adrian and John and others around the university can help you if you're interested in doing things through Indigenous methodologies, can help you find people who understand Indigenous methodologies as well. So, you know, very quickly within a research degree, you become the expert. Right? So you actually drive your project. You know more about this little bit that you're trying to fill, this factual area, than your supervisors. So what your supervisors do is provide a good scaffold for you. They help you, they help advise you on various things to do with, you know, what could enhance your research project, things that you need to worry about in terms of the boring administrative stuff that everyone has to do with the university. You know, your supervisor should be a good scaffold, a good buffer between you and the university, and help you navigate the research culture. But ultimately, this is your project, which is an incredibly liberating experience, and it's very, very inspiring to be able to be in a position where you can make a direct contribution based on your passions. And I think that's a really, it's a really unique opportunity in anyone's life, doing a higher degree. And I think John will probably, would you like to get up and talk a bit about cultural safety as well?
Adrian, yes.
Adrian, sorry, John. Adrian, sorry.
Folks, those who don't know me, I'm Adrian, and I'm a Jitterbullah man from North Queensland. And just to declare that my research area, my personal research area, is in infectious disease control. If anybody's doing anything like that, please come and see me. If not, I can certainly support and guide you on other sorts of advice. Look, I've been around the traps for a long time, and probably too long, some people might say. This is my 4th university. And guess what? About 10 years ago, you wouldn't have a room full of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander PhD students like you have here in this room today, even though this is probably a fraction of the entire enrolments of Indigenous HDR students at Griffith. It's absolutely wonderful to see this many Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in the room who are doing HDR degrees. Fantastic. And that goes a long way to what my point is about in terms of cultural safety. So, you know, back in the 90s when I started in the universities, cultural safety, I mean, it meant a group of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students coming together and feeling safe in a particular environment like universities, because traditionally they're not welcoming places. But over the years, we're getting, you know, units like GUMURRII that's been around for a very, very long time, and now a new unit like the one I'm heading up, which is the Indigenous Research Unit. All these sorts of structures are there to set up cultural safety mechanisms for you. Now, in a traditional tutorial session, I'd ask you what you understand to be cultural safety. But some people are writing prolifically around this area of cultural safety. There's a really interesting researcher in Western Australia, an Aboriginal woman, writing enormously around what this means to be culturally safe. I'm not going to try and sort of deconstruct what this means in terms of a philosophical position, but basically it's a place in which you can actually feel comfortable as an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander person doing your research without your identity or your cultural heritage being threatened or undermined by you doing your research. So cultural safety is particularly important in terms of thinking about your supervisory team as well. So, and that's where we come in and we help you with that sort of stuff. I can actually act as a sort of academic and cultural mentor in your supervisory teams without being such a formalised arrangement. You can also come to me and John and particularly Jennifer and talk about some of those particularly sensitive issues. But ultimately, let's not beat around the bush. There are some sensitive issues that we will come across that will actually challenge our identities, and that's okay, and it should be challenged because we're here to defend that. Okay, and that's why we do this research. Now, some of the things about being prepared, I thought some of you might be thinking of doing community research. Now, there's a number of ways to think about research. Firstly, there's a researcher-driven research, and that's what we see in terms of 95% that comes out of university is this, what we call researcher-driven research. That means you, as a researcher or an academic within your university, goes and consults the literature or identifies a particular topic that's a gap in our knowledge. And then we go off and pursue to try and understand that better and answer a particular question. The Indigenous Research Unit is also trying to promote, and that's part of our logo story, and that's about the other sort of 5% that we want to grow past 5%, which is what we call community-driven research. What are the key questions Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander communities have in terms of research? Now, I've got to say, that's not easy. Researcher-driven research is pretty straightforward. Consult the literature, consult a bunch of people, find the gap. Now, when you do community research, it's not that easy, because what you're dealing with is a population of people or a number of organisations that may have all sorts of understanding what the priorities are. And that's okay, and that's what we as researchers need to do. The thing that you guys do post-research, post your HDR, I think should be the marrying of them. Where do we start from a researcher-driven agenda, and how do we start to marry that up with community-driven research agenda? And I think that's your postdoc, quite frankly. But your undergrad, your HDR journey is about research training and mastering those research skills so you can do those really complex things that we know are really challenging in our communities. In terms of being prepared, you also got to start thinking about ethics. Sometimes, you know, your researchers might advise you a little bit down the track about you have to fill an ethics application in order for you then to interact with your human participants in your study. I would argue that you start to think about this now. Look at an ethics application, and Griffith University is streamlining its ethics processes quite nicely. It's a lot of online filling of the forms stuff. But as soon as you have Indigenous participants as part of your studies, it takes your study to a different place. And that place involves your understanding of the ethical principles involved with researching Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples, or searching with Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples. I want to plant that in your head as well. So start to read some stuff around ethics at this preparatory stage. It's really important, because I don't think you want to waste your time trying to get your head around this at critical points in your milestones within your PhD. Get that stuff and get to understand what these principles are. They're incredibly important. And a lot of Aboriginal people have put a lot of effort into developing these for a number of years. Next slide. Okay. Writing your proposals, who can help? Well, the first thing I would like to say in terms of writing your proposals, make them significant. Put a lot of effort into it. And some of you already way past this point, but if I had any advice for someone starting their journey, put a lot of effort into your proposal. In fact, I would do a good quality semi-literature review at your proposal end. It will save a whole bunch of time later on. And in fact, part of your proposal could be your introductory chapter, and you can start knocking off things pretty smartly once you get a decent proposal. The other thing about writing a proposal is think of it as a project plan as well. Think of it at which points within the next 3 to 6 years, depending on what type of enrolment you're undertaking, to think about what are those milestones within that PhD journey. Because that's a really good, and I strongly suggest, if you ever get to do anything around project planning or project management as part of your PhD journey, do it. I was at another university, and they ran some of these project planning, and you had engineers that had quite sophisticated formula around, you know, milestones within your particular degree. I wouldn't go to that extent, but I think you need to do more than a Gantt chart and more than a table to get your planning down right. Did you want to add anything to that?
One thing I just will say, I was going to reflect on it a little bit later, but you brought it up, is that your project is effectively a certificate that you can research, run a research project, plan a research project. And there's a wonderful article that has been written, and I think that everybody who's thinking of doing a PhD should consider it. But one of the authors is a lady named Margaret Kiley, and she wrote this article called it's a PhD, it's not a Nobel Prize. And really what this process enables you to do is to start a research career. So you're doing valuable research while you're doing it, but you're also learning all of the ropes. So don't feel that you need to know everything at the beginning, because if you did, there'd be absolutely no point in pursuing this journey. So see this as a really fantastic learning opportunity, and see this as an opportunity to either help your communities or help researchers in other areas. And I think it's a wonderful experience in that way. So don't feel overwhelmed, oh my gosh, it's a PhD or it's a research master's. Think, this is my trade certificate to a career in research, whether that be as part of a university or in industry or in government or other opportunities as well. It opens up a whole new world. So while we're saying you need to consider all of these things, don't feel that you need to know everything about them, because that's why you would start a PhD or start a research master's degree.
Absolutely. And who can help? Well, basically, that's what the GGRS is there for. But also, coming and chatting with me. I think at this point in time, I would advise thinking about mentors and potential supervisors. Now, mentors. Look, I don't think I'd be in the career I am today without good mentors. And some mentors can be a formal relationship. Like you'd go up and say, is this an appropriate thing that we can do together? Or you can have unofficial mentorship and look at someone and say, wow, I think they do such great work in this particular area. I wonder how they do that. And you start having conversations, but secretly, you're really thinking, what kind of advice can I get from someone like that? So think about mentors that are official or unofficial. And at this stage, I don't think you just need to formalise it in any particular way, but think about mentorship. I strongly recommend it.
I'll just say as well, you're lucky in a university where we've got people like Adrian and John, for example, that they are here and actively mentoring staff, non-Indigenous staff as well. So we've got, a lot of mentoring going on behind the scenes, not only for you guys, but also for people like me, a non-Indigenous person working a lot with Indigenous people as well. And that's a really great thing to know, that we're trying to get more and more understanding amongst the supervisors, and that we do have these really good unofficial mentoring relationships as well.
Applying for scholarships, of course, there's the usual stuff you can find out from our websites and all that sort of stuff, and they all have all the particular information that you need to apply for a scholarship. Bear in mind, I also have a number of grants, and lots of other researchers have a lot of grants. Those researchers who are actually doing active research in the Indigenous space have grants. Quite often they build scholarships within their grants, and they are equivalent to an APA, if not more. And in fact, I'm trying to convince researchers that we actually need to make them a little bit more attractive, so we can actually get people to work within some of the space. What to expect in your first year? Well, it can be varied. But basically, this is a pretty challenging time, and I think the first milestone you start to build towards is your confirmation. And Stephen did his confirmation, 2 months ago, I think it was? It was absolutely fantastic, and I certainly advise in that first year to go along and watch a few other people do confirmations. What is a confirmation? Anybody got any clues? Sorry? Yeah, exactly right. You're actually presenting your research question, your direction of your research, and you're actually going to stand up in front of your peers particularly from the university, and you're going to be questioned about your research area and how you've designed it, and then basically defend where your position is. And that's the first big milestone within your PhD journey.
Yes, and I think, you know, a lot of times if you're sitting outside the process before you come in and you see that they've got all of these, you know, the university set all of these requirements, it can be just very daunting if you just kind of look at the list that of things that you need to do to get a research higher degree. But all of this is scaffolded very carefully to make sure that you're getting all of the feedback and support that you need, so that, for example, in your confirmation, when you're receiving feedback, or even in your early stage milestone, you're getting feedback well before the examiners will give it to you. So we're actually setting up a process by which you're getting feedback and support and getting your research out there in a really safe way, by receiving the feedback, so that you ultimately are going to be successful. And once you're in, there are very few people who actually fail research degrees as well. It's really important to note that, and I'm talking less than 1%. The majority of people who withdraw from research degrees withdraw because of, you know, family or personal reasons, and often they come back later on and they pick up where they left off. But most people actually complete successfully because we have this nice scaffold around you and we want to see you do well. When you're let into a research higher degree, we have a lot of faith in you as researchers. Your applications are considered very, very carefully and taken very, very seriously, because we see, you know, a potential researcher, a potential colleague, and someone who we would want to work with in the future, perhaps. But also in the first year, I think that you can be daunted and you can be on a bit of a high as well. But one of the things that is important is orientation and induction, and there are a few things that you go through for that. With the graduate school, the Griffith Graduate Research School, we run inductions 4 times a year, and in that you get to meet our Dean, who will be coming along later, Professor Sue Berners-Price. You get to meet a whole lot of great researchers from around the university. You meet peers, and peers are honestly, building your peer networks in that first year is one of the most important things you can do. You will often receive great feedback from your peers. They're the people who's, you know, sometimes if you're a bit frustrated with your research, you know, they can talk you through some tougher times. You can bounce things off them that you might not necessarily feel that you can with a professor or whatever. You can get those initial ideas flowing and have some really great conversations that will support you. These people will support you throughout your research higher degree. They're your peers, they're your cohort. We also help you through things like how to be a responsible researcher, through these things like ethics, like Adrian was talking about before. Things that can seem very complicated, but there are people who can help you deal with these things. So it's really important to know that. We also run at GGRS a whole lot of workshops, and one of the workshops that we do run is on planning your PhD, which is effectively a project management, you know, how to use project management tools to get yourself effectively through your PhD and be able to plan your timelines and things like that as well. We run a whole lot of other things on how to make the most of your supervisor, so managing up, and we've got a wonderful research methodologist. So this term methodology can often be frightening to new researchers, but what Bill Metcalf, and that's his name, what Bill will help you do is to really strengthen your project. He does one-on-one consultations. We also have statistical support, so we have statistical consultants if you're doing things with statistics that can help, who can help you drill down into problems that you might be having. So these are all of the things that you will encounter during your first year. We always ensure that you have a good connection with your local area within the university as well, whether that be your element, so your school, your institute, or your group, that you have opportunities to meet your Dean's Research at inductions and your conveners, and that you know who they are. We also have a new wonderful thing called an HDR advocate who can help you through the process. If you have any issues that are specific and you don't feel comfortable talking to the convener and you're not sure who to go to, these people provide a confidential service, and they cannot pass on this information without your permission. And as advocates, they're advocates for the process. So if you're kind of getting stuck in the process and you're not sure where to go, you can go to them as well. So again, we've got all of these support structures in place to help you get through. And again, in my job, and with all of us really who work at the university, we can't do our jobs without hearing from you and being engaged with the HDR cohort. We need to know what you need, and we need to know what you feel you need extra training on or support on or whatever. And I'm certainly very open to anyone who ever wants to have a chat or send me an email about certain things that they think they might need support on, and seeing how I can direct you to existing services or perhaps maybe create something new as well. So I can't do my job without hearing from the HDR cohort and our high degree researchers. It's really important in my job that I do have that relationship with you as well. So we've talked a little bit about confirmation. Again, I'll just reiterate, it's something that should definitely not put you off. It's a wonderful opportunity for feedback, and it sort of is the gateway to the rest of your research too. It's a point at which one of these points in your high degree that really strengthens your project. So, and again, you shouldn't worry if your project changes a bit or you find some new research which shifts it a bit. Because, as I said before, if you knew exactly what you were doing at the beginning of the high degree research journey, there would be no point in enrolling in a PhD or a research master's. This is a learning process, it's a growing process, it's very much a journey, and we do refer to it as a journey quite frequently.
What about the online stuff too?
Oh yeah, yes, we do have online resources. Thank you for that. We do have a lot of online resources available as well. We've got a Learning at Griffith page, so this is this Blackboard system you may have heard of, and we upload all of our resources onto that page. The other thing that I should say about that is that a lot of the workshops that I'm running, and there are a lot of things available around the university, a lot of the workshops that I run are very much workshopping type situations. I want you, after you attend a workshop, to be able to take something away to show your supervisor. Every time. That's my goal. So they're very difficult to tape, but if you are a remote high degree researcher and a remote candidate, and you might be either remote for a period of time or you might officially be remote while you're, if you're living far away, I like to have a one-on-one connection, especially with the high degree candidates who are remote, because it can be feeling like you're a bit isolated, especially when you don't have regular contact with your peers. So, I'm always available on Skype. I often, for remote high degree researchers, I will conduct inductions over Skype, so you know that there's not just sort of this faceless bureaucracy there making decisions, that you've actually got people who you can talk to on a one-on-one basis, and that you know that there is someone you can go to for help who, for example, I will either help you or I'll connect you with the person directly who can help you as well. So that's really important to understand too. But there are a lot of online resources, and if you're not sure of how to go about finding them, and if you ever have any issues, you should just feel free to ask and we can direct you.
Just a final note on training and workshops. I'll work with Eliza and Sue and her team and Andrew in developing, I'm going to be developing workshops where, as I said earlier, they might be unique to your circumstances as Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander researchers. But I also host an annual research workshop, and there's one that's coming up on the 30th of September, if you're interested, on South Bank. Unfortunately, we have to charge a little bit this year. We didn't charge last year, but it's not exorbitant. But you're more than welcome to come. But the other thing I do with this particular workshop, I actually invite HDR students to do a presentation. And it's a good way to start, I suppose. Stephen used it as a way to do a practice on his confirmation, and I thought it went pretty well. Yeah. So be prepared that I might tap you on the shoulder or just come along and have a listen. The workshop is actually for novice researchers and experienced researchers. And it's, again, a place where you can actually start to network, and again, and also a place where you can start to even think about mentorship. Brother? It's just for the day at South Bank at the Ship Inn. You can find all the details on our website. You just do a little Google search on our Griffith webpage to Indigenous Research Unit, and it'll be all there.
I just wanted to say as well, we're also running a workshop for high degree research supervisors, and that's on Wednesday this week, on supervising Indigenous and international high degree researchers. So we think about all of these issues quite deeply, and Adrian's running that. He's our keynote speaker and star of the show. And then we've got people from all around the university who are experts at supervising high degree researchers from very culturally diverse backgrounds, and they're coming to also run a hands-on workshopping session with the supervisors that are coming along. So that's something that we are going to continue and that we're going to do fairly regularly. But yeah, that's sort of just one of the things that sort of goes on behind the scenes. Oh, you want to come to that one? You can go onto our website. I'm happy to give that to you later, and you can RSVP for that. And if worst comes to worst, then you can always just come along, and you should feel free to do that. So yeah, everyone's welcome.
Just to add, I mean, Griffith University scrutinises supervisors pretty strongly, and they have to take this journey of sort of being qualified to be a supervisor at Griffith University. And Sue's set up this amazing system to get supervisors do things differently than what they used to do in terms of supervision to improve that kind of outcome. Okay. Next one. Staying motivated and getting support. Again, look, I think, coming back to my point earlier around mentorships and getting that critical mass of people around you that really talk research, you've got to start immersing yourself in the language of research, and that's one of the ways you start or keep being motivated around your research topic. There will be peaks and troughs in your motivation, and that's going to be normal. There's going to be times when you think, why am I doing this?
As with anything, yeah.
As with anything, but you know, it's a journey, and some of it's really tough. Some of it's tough on relationships. In fact, I wouldn't say that doesn't affect you in a personal way. And in fact, this is quite a personal journey. Quite often, it's almost seen as a selfish journey. I've been in cohorts of Aboriginal researchers who struggle with this and say, why am I doing this? Is this going against my community? Is this going against the things that I believe and I've grown up with culturally? And in fact, you know, it's part of that conversations with a network of people around help you start to understand that a little bit better. And I'm always happy to have a chat with you about that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and it's something that, you know, is across the cohort, not just with Indigenous Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander peoples. It's also with the cohort that are from all over the place. It doesn't matter where you're from or who you are or your background or your research experience. There's going to be at least one point during your high degree research experience, probably more, where you think, can I really do this? And we talked a little bit before about you having confidence to do it and you know, are you good enough really? And of course you are. Everyone has these doubts. It's very, very normal. And in fact, I think even when you're a professor, you still have those doubts because you're the type of person who wants to really know more. You want to discover more. You want to understand, you know, the topics that you're researching. And so you always know that there's a little bit more that you feel that you could be doing. But just remember, with this high degree research experience, this is your certificate effectively to go on to a great career and contribute in many ways to the, you know, in the world of research. It's not a Nobel Prize. So that's what we're getting you. We're giving you the training and we're giving you the support so that you can go out and be really proactive and passionate independent researchers later on. So that's very important to remember.
In terms of writing and completing a thesis, I think, and I might be speaking out of turn, but we have a couple of models that you can think about in terms of your thesis development. And I might be saying something wrong, but we do have a traditional thesis, which is your complete writing of your particular topic in a concise and singular looking document. And then there is research by publication. And
PhD by published or unpublished papers.
And then we have a hybrid model, don't we? We can combine chapter and papers together. And all, it's about, how does those particular models fit to your particular type of study that you're trying to do. You may not have time to publish during your PhD, depending, but I had a paper submitted in December last year and I got assessment back in May. So it takes a while for those sorts of things, depending on the journal, of course. And we're talking about journal publications, not books or
yeah, we're not so mean that you have to write a whole book during your PhD because that's effectively what you're already doing. But yeah.
But think about those models.
Yeah.
And I think you guys put training on for that, don't you?
Yeah, we do actually. We have this. We have a workshop called Thesis by Published or Unpublished Papers. Now, every high degree researcher is expected to publish one paper by the time they finish their high degree research. Now, that doesn't need to necessarily be sole authored. That could be you with a co-author, say, who might be your supervisor, for example. So it's sort of not like you're left in the dark. And it's to be really competitive when you finish, you do need to have a publication track record and you do need to know how to publish. So there is a way that you can compile your thesis by published and unpublished papers. So they could be papers that you've published, papers that you are going to publish, papers that you are preparing for publication, and it all depends on your particular field, how many and what sort of papers they are and that sort of thing. So this is something that you should talk to your supervisors about very early in the journey because it's not something that can be decided right at the end because again it needs to be able to tell a story, a complete story, so it can't just be 3 separate papers. It has to be able to tell a story and then you link it obviously with your introductory chapters and so on and so forth. So, but there are so many options nowadays, so you don't necessarily, I mean Sue talks about this really beautifully and Sue Burness-Price has just walked in, she's the Professor Dean of the Graduate School, but she says that when she finished her thesis was sort of like that and a chemistry thesis like that and then she published afterwards. But now as a marker, she comes in and gets these theses that have already been peer reviewed and they're much smaller looking and it's much better psychologically for the examiners. And you've already been validated by your peers once you publish. So a lot of people have been doing this for years unofficially, but we're just now recognising it officially. So that's another option, and Sue can perhaps talk to you about that more. But again, we have training around all of these things. It's not sort of, you'll mention it once, you'll never hear it again. We always have support around everything that we're telling you is an option. We have support around those things so that you know exactly how to go about that.
In terms of finishing your PhD, this is really... well, the focus would be around your examiners, really, and who they might be, whether they're national or international. Again, it's going to have to rely, that conversation is going to happen with your supervisory team, but that's particularly important to have those ongoing conversations, not so much at the beginning, but mainly towards the middle and the end about, who might be your examiners. And be quite strategic about that. You don't have to be just kind of random, but it's always good to incorporate your examiner within your thesis somehow. It's a way of, validating. And you might be following their work anyway and adding to their body. You've referenced, yeah. Added to their body of knowledge, but make sure you reference them. That's a little trick. Anything else?
Yeah, generally, that's something you can worry about later on. Your supervisors will want you to do well. They won't try and give you examiners who will be belligerent and looking for an alternate route. They should be finding someone who is familiar with your methodology and on board with your methodology and knows the subject back to front, and most likely you would have referenced and would have involved in the thesis in some way. You don't know who they are, I think, until you finish, but you can certainly have the opportunity, if you know there's someone who's, who doesn't really like this particular research style that you've been doing, you do have the opportunity to say, well, I don't want these particular people to be the examiners, but you can't obviously choose your examiners yourself. But that's something to worry about much later on. It's definitely a conversation to have with your supervisors, but again, your supervisors want you to do well. We all want you to do well. They see you as future colleagues, and especially towards the end of your higher degree, they're looking at you as future colleagues, and they want your research to be validated. So,
graduation and beyond. I heard a really interesting statistic about 5 years ago that people with PhDs live 10 years longer than average than people with don't have PhDs. So, so think about what your goals might be for an extra 10 years of your life as well.
Maybe they have less time to be reckless because they're always behind the computer writing or something.
You pretty much lost 10 years of your life for doing your PhD. No, it's not true. It's not true. But look, I've got to say, an Aboriginal person or Torres Strait Islander person with a PhD, you're not going to have any trouble getting a job. Particularly in academia, there's going to be jobs, and there's more jobs probably, or opportunities out there. And in the research space, I can't tell you how much you could probably get your fingers into all sorts of great things and very interesting things. I have a very, very hard time saying no. Look, this is a really exciting area to be in. It's emerging and it's dynamic. It's international. We have a lot of colleagues in other Indigenous populations around the world doing some amazing work. And look, what it does, it shows a new light on knowledge. And it's a really exciting space. So I can't tell you, that's where the prize is, really.
And all you really need to do is to be tenacious and to know that there is assistance out there if you ever need it. So, tenacity, I think, is probably 98% of the equation. 1% is intelligence and 1% is luck. But you're already here at a PhD information session, so obviously you've done well in your work so far. So, yeah, be tenacious and you'll get there.
And we've already said all that, but again, I don't think they're the only places you can get support as well. There are other Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander HDR students in other universities you can link up with. There's a really interesting network, called Narracan. I'd like to share with you that QUT has this network. It's not free for us as Griffith members because we're not part of their network, but they can certainly open up their workshops for Indigenous HDR students to attend. I mean, high calibre researchers Professor Aileen Morton-Robinson brings in. So don't forget that that's in our backyard, basically, in Brisbane. And Aileen does a fantastic job. But just don't forget that we're the core group. I think that's it. Yep. Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I know that I've gotten a lot out of that presentation. I myself am thinking about going on the PhD journey, so I'm hoping that everyone else in the audience has got as much out of that as I did. We're going to go to our lovely panel of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander researchers now. I'm going to read a little bit about these lovely people who we've got on the panel, and then we'll get to some questions. So we'll start off with Mr. Stephen Corporal, who was born in Townsville and lives in southeast Queensland. He was involved in counselling and welfare work in the Brisbane Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community for more than 10 years before completing his Bachelor of Social Work and Bachelor of Arts Psychology degrees at UQ in 2003. We won't hold that against you. During this time, he was announced the 2003 SBS valedictorian for his work with students at the University of Queensland as President of the Social Work Students Association. He was also the Indigenous Postgraduate Representative for James Cook, and he was the President of the Social Work Alumni at UQ. He completed a Masters of Social Policy at JCU and worked as a Senior Student Support Officer at the UQ Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Studies Unit from 2005 to 2009, and then the Indigenous Recruitment Manager for the School of Medicine. He currently works with the Griffith University Health Group as a project officer and does guest lectures to health students. He's currently working on his PhD and just done confirmation, as we mentioned earlier. Congratulations. And his PhD is called Indigenous Health Workforce Building, University Indigenous Students and Lecturers Interactions. This is Stephen Corporal.
Wow.
And next we've got Mr. Eddie Sinnott. Eddie was born in Queensland but grew up in southern New South Wales and northern Victoria, where his family are traditionally from, spending his last years of secondary education in Queensland. He completed a Bachelor of Arts double majoring in, this is going to be a mouthful, Politics and Government and Asian Studies and International Relations in 2008. Was that right? Yeah, too many words. All of the things. He also recently completed a Bachelor of Laws with honours in 2012 and has worked in policy and program development and implementation at state and federal levels of government, and law enforcement positions as a cadet and officer with the Australian Customs and Border Protection Service. He then began working with the GUMURRII Student Support Unit as a Learning Assistance Officer here on the Nathan campus, and he has just recently begun his PhD with the Griffith Law School, enrolled part-time, focusing on the question of authority and power within the constitutional recognition debate. So, Eddie Sinnott, please welcome him. Then we've got our graduate, Dr. Kerry Bodle, who started her Bachelor of Commerce in 1995, enrolled as a maturity student via the alternative entry at the age of 38 while supporting her growing family. As a GUMURRII student, she completed her undergraduate degree with a passion for statistics and began her honours in 2003. Additional courses in quantitative issues in statistics, research methods for honours, and research findings in financial accounting during her honours program provided her with the relevant research skills required to undertake a PhD. She was also a sessional tutor in the Department of Accounting, Finance and Economics and an associate lecturer with the GUMURRII Student Support Unit in 2004. She's currently an accounting lecturer with the Department of Accounting, Finance and Economics here at Griffith, and she completed her PhD on, and this is a long one, the effects of changes in accounting standards on financial ratios, consequences for bankruptcy prediction models in 2013. Last year? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Congratulations, Kerry, for completing. She's also now working on developing and implementing an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander business course, which will describe the communication and work practice skills and knowledge required to engage with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in a variety of business and industry contexts. So welcome, Kerry, or Dr. Bodle.
I presume.
And I will apologise in advance, Uncle. I did Google you to get your bio. So we've got Lyndon Murphy on the end. Lyndon Murphy is a lecturer in Indigenous Studies in the School of Humanities at Griffith University. He worked for the Department of Aboriginal Affairs and Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander Commission from 1983 to 2000. He's currently enrolled in the PhD program at Griffith, and his research interests include liberal democracy and cultural difference and Aboriginal policy practice in Australia. So welcome, Lyndon. So what we might do is, I'm expecting some wonderful questions from the audience, but we did receive some in advance through the registration process. So if everyone's okay with that, I might start off with those questions and direct them to our panel members. But please raise your hand if you do have a question, and I'll come round and get you to ask your question. So we'll start off with Dr. Kerry Bodle. How long did it take you to complete your PhD, and what were some of the challenges or greatest struggles of that process?
Right, well, it took me maximum time, which I was working at the time with the Accounting and Finance Department. So that was in all probably about 8 years, part-time. The struggles, again, was probably because of when I did start, it was when there wasn't a lot of our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander mentors that had already been through that process. The supervision, it was also, second-guessing myself, thinking that I wasn't good enough. And obviously priority is I love my teaching. So sometimes the research got pushed aside because, I just wanted to teach. So what was the other part of the question?
What were some of the greatest challenges and how long? Yeah, I think you answered both of those things. Yeah, I know it can be difficult when you're asked to teach while you're trying to finish a PhD. And I know, Lyndon, you've had a similar problem. Do you find that challenging?
Oh, very much. Because I mean, the teaching component takes an enormous. Well, I think it takes an enormous amount of time. You're continually updating how you're actually presenting, and the good thing about, in relation to actually completing your PhD, the opportunity to sit down and actually just yarn ideas with students, it really helps, not only just the way in which you articulate, but often you've got to hear how you're articulating, and that comes back on you as a teacher. you know, and the way in which those sorts of ideas get across. So it's a nice cycle of reflection that occurs in the teaching process. For me, I really enjoy that process. But unfortunately, I probably get caught in some of the things there that you were saying before, Eliza, where it's not a Nobel Prize, you know, in terms of ideas, and you want to keep understanding more. But I really enjoy that exchange of teaching and working. But it is hard work. It just imposes. And the other things, when you got family, it's not just work, your PhD, but the family commitments that come in as well.
Yeah, it can be difficult juggling commitments and responsibilities. But like you said, there's benefits to teaching while you're finishing a PhD as well. So,
yeah.
Yeah, and like we touched on before, because there's very few Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander researchers, you may be called upon to do guest lectures or even teach a whole course in some cases. So I'll go to the next question. And I might direct this at Stephen Cockrell. Did you face any issues with supervisors or finding a suitable supervisor? And what strategies did you use for finding your supervisor?
Wow, that sounds like a question for me, doesn't it, that one? It took a while because we don't have a lot of Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people to choose from. That's in relation to the research that I was doing of researching the interaction between academics and students, and I'm using Indigenous methodologies, and I wanted someone within that understood a bit of the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander culture, Indigenous methodology, so forth, but also an understanding of health. And I'd found a person, and they were the head of nursing. And what happened was the head of nursing left. And
which could happen.
All of a sudden, just it came out of the left field. And she said, "Oh, I'm leaving. I'm going back to Victoria." And I thought, "Wow, okay, what am I going to do now?" You know. And it took a little while for me to find my feet after that, and what I actually did, I looked around for some other people that understood my where I was coming from with my research, and it took a little bit of, and I actually had to change schools, and I went back over to social work, and I'm a social worker, so I went back over to social work. And I found a couple of people there, and it's been, let me say, it's been great since then, because got through the confirmation, it went well, you know. But it took that little bit of time. You have to not lose faith, so to speak, but you've got to keep going with it and just look around. And there's people around, and also ask people, you know, like talk to people around the university.
Yeah, definitely keep talking to people. I think that's a really important point, is about finding a space where you feel comfortable and surrounded by a supervisor and people in that group who you're going to feel comfortable with, and you found it back where you originated in social work, so yes. That's a good thing. We might go to Eddie as well. How did you go finding a supervisor?
I guess I was pretty lucky. I continued on with my honours supervisor into my PhD. But I did have problems initially with my honours paper. I didn't want to have my supervisor that I have at the moment. But actually after getting to know him a bit better, it actually worked out well. But I guess I've always avoided academics during my undergraduate. I was working at customs the whole time I was doing my law degree. So I just come into uni and leave pretty quickly and get in and out. So I had to force myself to actually go up to the law school and introduce myself and say, you know, hey, this is what I want to do. You know, can you do that? So I was basically bouncing off people's doors until one of them was interested. So yeah, it was good. It forced me out of that shell a bit.
And that was your honours supervisor you went back to?
And now I'm with him for my PhD.
Yeah, I think that's an important point as well. Some people naturally follow on for a PhD from their honours and may want to stick with the same supervisor, which can be comfortable, but you do need to shop around and interview potential supervisors to make sure that you're going to be working with the right one for you, I think.
And also the other thing is that they don't necessarily have to have the same qualifications as you do. They can have, but it's someone that has that interest in your area.
Yep, yep.
And you get on well with them, you know.
You got to work with them for a couple of years, so you want to be pretty good friends.
You got to get on well with them.
Okay, this one's a little bit of a long one, and then we might open it up to the floor. So, what support is there for conducting Indigenous standpoint research that engages Indigenous epistemology? Is this negotiated on a supervisor basis, or is there more consolidated support, innovation, and guidance? I might direct this to Adrian as well, and anyone in the panel who could possibly answer that. Maybe Adrian first. And so it's talking about conducting Indigenous viewpoints on research, I'm gathering, and research that it's engaging Indigenous methodologies and beliefs. And is this negotiated with your supervisor, or is there greater support? That's my interpretation of that.
Well, basically, should you use Indigenous methodologies in your PhD? Of course, you should. Where they make sense. Don't think that you're obliged to use Indigenous methodologies just because you're Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Good qualitative research, good quantitative research techniques are already existing. So where it makes sense, apply it. If it makes sense to you culturally, apply it. But what I urge you not to try and do is to do a whole critique of some particular methodology and try to invent something new at a PhD level. And I've seen PhD students try to do this. They say, look, I really struggle. I reject everything that this kind of system has, and I just think it needs to be more Aboriginal. You can do that in your postdoc. Don't try to do that in your undergrad, in your HDR, in your PhD. You just don't have the time to do that. And what you're trying to do is just basically answer a particular question, master the skills of research, and get on to do that in your postdoc area. And by the way, Griffith University offers an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander postdoctoral fellowship once you're finished as well. So that's something you can think about post-PhD. But it's challenging, you know. Some of the methodologies that you might encounter are feeling a little bit uncomfortable, but that doesn't mean you totally reject them. You can hybridise them as well, and I know Karen Martin would actually stab me in the chest if she heard me use that word, hybridise. But it's the melding of particular two methodologies that kind of makes sense to answer your particular question. And it comes down to your question as well, a lot of the time as well. But if you're interested in it, read extensively on it, but also inform your supervisors on, if they're not familiar with this particular area, they need to get their heads around some of it as well.
I think that's really important for all of you thinking of maybe doing a PhD. You don't have to do an Indigenous PhD or topic just because you are Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders. A lot of you may be drawn to those sorts of topics because you want to get involved in community and giving back to community, but don't feel that you have to. Just go where your passion is and what you're interested in. And if you do decide to go for an Indigenous methodology or an Indigenous topic, there are support available with the Indigenous Research Unit, but myself and John at GUMURRII can help you out with that sort of stuff too.
Yeah,
so, yeah.
On mine, I've put in Indigenous methodology, but you also, I like to use qualitative, where you're yarning with people, you're talking to people, and that suits the Indigenous methodology, you know, talking to people. And then the protocols for engaging the community and the people. So I talk a little bit about that and understanding how to, and that's where you work, that's where I've worked it in there, and it's... you
can sort of merge the two.
Yeah, you put them in there, but as Adrian said, I probably don't know about telling Karen, but it's understanding where you're from and the people that you're wanting to research, and following good protocols for engaging with them. And that's why I've included Indigenous methodologies, saying that I understand where the people are coming from, and this is where I'm coming from. And it's looking okay. It's looking good.
It's a good way to go through
Yeah.
presentation, so it's good. Kerry, did you want to add
Yeah, I
something
just wanted to add, when I started on my journey, it wasn't only just a journey on research, but it was also a journey with learning about my culture, because I had, didn't know much about it because of my mum being part of the stolen generation. So when I started on the PhD journey, I wanted to research in the area of Indigenous issues. I was, steered away from it, saying, oh, well, it's not mainstream, you won't get published, it'll be hard to get examined, all those things. So rather than, sort of fighting the system, I decided to take on a topic that was more appropriate. Now, I'm not sorry that I went down that avenue, because I find that the learning to do the research was the point. I thought I was here to try and do things for connecting the culture, me learning about, sort of what I could do to contribute to our community. So since submitting the PhD, I've just been inundated with so much that I can now contribute as an expert an expert researcher. So that's the point. I think it's not trying to fight the system, but it's about, just letting the pathway open up to you, because it will lead you to where you can be best, help in your community.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing example. And even though you were doing a non-Indigenous topic, if I can call it that,
yep.
You still brought your culture with you, and you still found a way to reconnect with your culture, even though you weren't doing a typically Indigenous topic. So we might open up to the floor. Yeah, one in the back corner. Oh, one in the back corner? Yes? Sorry, I'm just grabbing my...
You were talking about protocols and stuff when you were yarning, and whether or not the ethics thing that Adrian was talking about, does that come into that process?
Yes, I'm just up to the ethics at the moment, and I'm really considering, like with the ethics, I haven't put my application in yet, but I'm just working on it, and I find that to be ethical, I have to tell them everything that I'm going to do with the people that I want to research, and you have to write all that down so there's nothing unethical there. And some of that is about the protocols, how I engage with our mob. You got to make sure that you talk to elders. And my research is actually going to be at the university here, but I like to involve elders, I like to involve community people, involve the Indigenous Research Unit, make sure I let the GUMURRII unit know what I'm doing, let as many students know as what I'm doing, so that it's out there, and then get feedback from them as well. But also there's little protocols of how you engage with people. You say, I'm from, I'm Eastern Arrernte, that's my people, but I live here in Yagara Turrbal land, and then you ask people, you say, oh, where are you from, cuz, and so there's that little bit of a engagement with people. You're not just going in, seeing the people as you're not objectifying the people. Where, years ago, people had gone in and they've objectified a lot of our people when they've done research by just making them objects of the research, so to speak, rather than actually talking to them about what their community's like, a little bit from their culture, and I find that that's actually being very ethical. Does that make sense? Or?
Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's important to follow protocols, because there's so many different communities and different groups of people that they may not be from your mob. So you've got to make sure that you're following those correct protocols and paying respects to them as well. Yeah.
I just wanted to say that I think that method of research is something that can inform research far more broadly than just in researching Indigenous issues.
Being respectful.
These are things, like respect and understanding your subjects and everything. This is the sort of thing that, whilst it's very innovative what you're doing, it would be great to see more broadly in research. That's why we need more people.
I think that's why we value Indigenous researchers so much at the university, because we see that Indigenous methodology can inform research far more broadly than that in the future, and teach other researchers how to incorporate it into their research. And I think it's very valuable what you're doing. Yeah.
Just got to add.
Yes.
Oh, I got the mic.
Oh, you got
Myself, Associate Professor Karen Martin and Gary Allen have put together a manual, and that's going to be online for students to use on how to understand and navigate this area. Because if you've got human participants in your study, you have to do an ethics application. You are required to do that. Yeah, so you've got no choice. The way Stephen beautifully articulated what he intends to do is exactly what you need to consider in terms of writing up your protocols and engagement strategies for your participants. And that's exactly what we talk about in the manual as well. But we'll be putting on workshops and stuff as well around ethics, so it doesn't seem so daunting. It's a major part of your work as well if you've got human participants. And if you're not having human participants, most of the times you don't need ethics approval.
Awesome. So watch this space. There's definitely a lot of resources and support. Okay, any other questions from the floor? Yeah.
So my question is just towards the panel. I'm about to finish my undergrad, and I'm tossing up between going and doing further research or going into a career and getting a job and whatnot. So my question is, how did you guys make that decision? Was research something you always wanted to do? Was that your intention? Or did you have influences that changed your pathway or whatnot? Like, what sort of advice can you give me with making that decision?
All right. So I might point that at Eddie, because it sounds like you had a similar dilemma working in private industry.
Well, in the end, my decision was basically removed from my hands anyway, but it was something I was struggling with before then. I finally got into my dream job that I'd wanted for about 7 years, and I'd applied about 3 times, so I finally got into that. I had a very well-paying job in what I was doing, but I was tossing up whether I'd move to Canberra, stay here. They were planning for wedding and all other family stuff too at the same time. But I think you just have to think about your own circumstance. Research was always something that I wanted to do, and going through the honours process and talking to my supervisor and him saying to me, have you thought about it? And I mean, I still think, am I really capable now, kind of thing, but that was a good conversation to have with him too. But my plans probably weren't until I was thinking 5 or 6 years down the track and then coming back. But yeah, I think you just have to weigh up, are you able to do it? At the moment, I'd prefer to be doing it full time if I could, but it's just the circumstances and rent and bills and what everyone else knows about, and having to worry about someone else rather than just myself as well. So all those external. But someone mentioned before too about the stresses on family. So it was something that I had to talk to my wife and say, I'm going to be doing my PhD part time, but if we want to do something, you can't just say to me on the Friday night, do you want to go out? Because I got a deadline for that Monday or something like that. So they're all the little things that come up later on, just having to think through all that. But if you want to do it,
you'll find a way.
Yeah. my thing kind of was, although I wanted to go do my dream job and go explore all that kind of stuff, I didn't want to wait. I thought if I kept putting my PhD off, I could be much older than I am now, and I'll never get to do it as well. So that were kind of the 2 things that I swung between.
Excellent. And Kerry, did you want to add something? You came back to university supporting a growing family, so.
Yeah, no, well, through this whole process, I mean, like 8 years, I probably was close to 50 when I started mine. But when you talk about a career, the thing is that when you start, like you're trying to make that choice, you get a scholarship, so you can survive on that. You can also do tutorial work within your discipline. That's paid. You can do up to, I think, 9 hours of tutoring. So there's always the opportunity that you can earn on the side. Going down academia, well, I think that was my intention. One, I didn't want to work, because I've had experience in mainstream business where you're clocking on at 7 and you're not finishing till 7. Now, I think part of me is about family. So being an academic, I can work from home when the kids were sick. Then it was just more flexible for me, and it fit me better. So that's the things that you can sort of look at. Is going down to PhD not going to be an income earner? Well, no. It can be both. And while we're going through this global financial crisis, or the jet lag of it, in economics they teach you that while there's a downturn, the best thing you can do is skill yourself up. So the more you can get the qualifications, when we get out and there's going to be a lot more jobs, you're just going to snap up jobs wherever you go, and you'll get that higher salary, once you finish.
Yeah, there's definitely that long-term gain. And there's also the opportunity for top-ups as well to the scholarship. So depending on if you feed into grants and things like that Adrian was speaking about earlier, there may be the opportunity to top up the scholarship. Lyndon, did you want to add something?
Oh, just a little. I mean, I never had the opportunity to make those sorts of choices. But there's some things there that and I usually say this to the mature age students that we get coming in at undergrad and going on, and that is actual experience is just so important in the ways in which, so long as you maintain a passion for your area of interest, getting out there and actually working it really can come back to assist you. I mean, I started my undergrad just over 20 years ago, but the work experience I'd gained in between when I left school, I was only a junior, and then actually working in the service and within these areas. When I first went, and I'll tell this, I'll tell it quick because I know you said to be brief. When I first went into study uni, and one of the first things I even before then, I thought, what's a black fella do at university? It just didn't make any sense, to me personally. But once I got in there, in my first semester, and those first 3 or 4 weeks, I was writing everything down these people were saying. I didn't know what I was writing. I didn't know what if what I was writing was right or the wrong things to write. I was just writing because everyone else was writing. I then went back, and I actually had a look at what I'd done, and then sort of began to realise, hang on a minute, this is not the experiences or the understandings of what it's like being an Aboriginal, I relied upon my own experience, my work experience, life experience, my own family history experience, and I started to bring that in to the way in which I approached my academic work. So it became a real tool for me in the terms that I didn't actually have to take on board everything that, the lecturer was saying. I had a position from where it was possible for me to question. I didn't have to learn this. I already knew something different. And basically what university will give you the skills to do is to formulate those arguments, get an understanding of the sets of ideas that you can bring in around, and to start pulling things apart. Either way, it's going to be fine, but we all run our own courses in terms of how we learn and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that was a good summary of all the different points. Like you need to, there's benefits of both. Going out and getting a grad job and then coming back and doing research, or going straight into research. There is pros and cons of both, and it's about finding which path is the best for you. So we might just do one last question.
Can I just quickly?
Yeah.
It probably depends a lot on the field of research you want to do as well. I did politics and law, and I think the year in between my degrees and the work I did at customs, I probably learnt a lot more in those 4 years over working than I probably did in the entire time during my undergrad. And it wasn't, obviously I've learnt all the knowledge and the different strategies and methodologies I'm going to be using for my PhD. But being at customs, arresting someone, doing the brief, going all the way through, you're learning all these things in law school, and the next minute you're there in front of another person having to actually do that. And it's either now or you can stuff everything up. So I guess in those areas, work experience was very valuable for me too. But that was easier for me to make that decision because I'd already had those experiences and I already knew what was out there and what I could do. Where a lot of students that I was studying with at the same time had come straight from high school, hadn't done anything else, had done hospitality or something, and was still looking for those couple of years' experience before they made that decision. Yeah, you had those extra skills and knowledge. We'll go one last question.
I'm not sure if this will be a question for the panel or whether it be a question for you two. How difficult or easy is it to get a scholarship? Because if I do decide to do this PhD, I actually have to support myself. So I would need to I'd need to know how easy is it to get a scholarship, because that would probably help me decide whether or not I would do it. Is it difficult to get one, or generally when somebody applies for a scholarship while they're doing their PhD, when I understand it's quite a sum of money? How is it?
Well, we're addressing that in more detail in the next session if you can stick around, but maybe I'll let these guys answer it briefly.
We've got 4 designated Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander postgraduate HDR scholarships, and you can we barely give away all 4 in a year, so your chances are pretty high. Yeah. And look, and my boss, Professor Ned Pankhurst, wouldn't like me to say this, but he would also seriously consider adding to that if we had a pool of, more than 4 scholarships.
So if everyone in this room decided to do a PhD tomorrow?
Adrian said it was okay.
Yeah, and I might be sacked too.
They'll use your wages to go into the scholarship.
But I would certainly go into bat to see if we can get. I mean, seriously, if we had 6 tomorrow, Sue and I would be jumping up and down, just totally elated. Yeah.
To support my study now,
Yeah.
and I've got a mortgage, all that sort of thing, and
Yeah. You'd be a prime candidate for support.
Yeah, hello, Sue Bonus-Price, Dean, Graduate Research School. So I've been sitting and listening to all of this, and that's a fantastic question that you've asked. And I guess, Adrian and I have been working pretty closely over the last year or so about what we can do to break down barriers so that we can encourage as many Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander candidates as possible entering into PhDs, and once you're in, supporting you through that very difficult journey, which is difficult for everybody. So I would say we do have these special scholarships which actually have, for the other scholarships we offer, you have to be Honours 1 or equivalent, but for these specific scholarships, you can be Honours 2A and equivalent. So that's the advantage. But as Adrian said, that in the past, they've just not been taken up. So we both have the same boss, Ned Pankhurst, and if everyone in this room decided they wanted to do a PhD, we'd go and have a chat with him. There shouldn't be a barrier. We would just want to encourage you as much as we can.
Yeah, I definitely encourage everyone to stick around for the second session and find out more about scholarships and that sort of thing. I'll just put one last question to the panel, just really quickly. What's your one tip or piece of advice for future PhD students? We'll start with Lyndon, maybe?
Don't lose your passion for your project. Passion for your project.
Excellent advice. Kerry? Or Dr. Pope?
You don't have to be intelligent, you just have to be persistent.
Definitely persistence. Yes, Eddie? One piece of advice?
Good supervisors and mentors.
Good one. Stephen?
You've already stole mine.
Yeah, all the good ones are gone.
All the good ones. But
Stay deadly?
No, I was just thinking, if you really, really, really want to do it, just go ahead and do it, because money will come and go. The family, well, you still got to look after your family. I'd nurse my boys through all the years of study I've done. But if you really want to do it, you just go ahead and do it, and the money will come. I promise you, the money will come, and also your family will stick by you. If, got good family.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and do it.
So be passionate, be persistent, get a good supervisor, and just do it. That's the advice. So I might just pass back to John to finish up. Thank you, everyone.